Hello, this is Ryan Smith with Combat Sports Talk, and I am here today with Arjan Carlos Moreno. He is the Muay Thai coach at Oakdale MMA and Merced MMA. He's also the president of the American Muay Thai Association. We've also got George G Money Stallworth here, and he is going to be helping us out with this interview. Coach Arjan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Excited.
All
Me
right.
too, man. Me too. It's been a long time coming, Coach.
So,
So
so
just to start us off,
yeah.
why don't you give us a little bit of your history and background as a coach, Coach Carlos?
Okay. Well, fighter turned coach years ago, back in the 90s. My first real coaching gig was in 1993 at a no holds barred event. And I had my cousin was actually fighting in it, and that's what got me started. Um, I started coaching Muay Thai and no holds barred back then. After I fought before all that stuff. So and UFC came out around the same time. It was really close in proximity, and I've been with this game since the beginning. You know.
So you said that you started off you started your story with the coaching, but how did you get involved in fighting in general?
Well, that's even a longer story, but basically, I moved to New Mexico to meet my mother for the first time. I think I was 19 at the time, and of course, you had no friends there, and I didn't know anybody there. And I went to a gym, and they had this thing on the wall that said Muay Thai Mondays and Wednesdays at some time. I'm like, well, that sounds exotic. I don't know what that is. And so I went to the class, and I walked up to the the instructor, and I said, "So what's this Muay Thai thing all about?" Real cocky. And he put these pads on my arms and got me down on my knees, and the sun came up and kicked me and knocked me over. I'm like, "Sign me up. I'm in. I'm in. I want that."
Wow. So
Yeah.
you started coaching or started training MMA or Muay Thai at 19 years old. Um,
Yeah.
so so what was that like? What were some of the learning curves that you had to get over? I've always heard that the seasoning of your body and preparing of your body to take these kicks and not cry in pain is something that is pretty grueling in Muay Thai.
I think some of us are just born for this in a way. I think some of us embrace the pain. I guess is the word to say. You embrace. It makes you feel alive. I guess. And at the time, it's what I really needed. It saved my life. I'd say. I always say it saved my life because if I didn't have that then when I needed it, I wouldn't have been stable. I wouldn't have been grounded. You know what I mean? And so when things, as I was going through transitions to becoming a man at that time, these helped me keep grounded. And yeah, it was a lot of. I mean, it was hard. It wasn't easy. That's for sure. But once I started, I was like, I'm not going to stop. I just kept going, kept going. And then in '96, I met Cheetah. I moved back to California. I moved back to California in 1994, 93ish, 94, and I started teaching my friends basically because they convinced me to go teach them how to do throw kicks and stuff at the park. Scared off all the Tai Chi people, of course. Making all that noise, and I started teaching for a guy named Jeff Lindstrom, and he had a school called Pacific Rim of Martial Arts, and his goal was to have different styles of martial arts around the Pacific Rim. And I had my own little office at the time, and I already had a team of 15 fighters at the time. And he asked me one day when we were having lunch, he goes, "So what's your goals for Muay Thai?" I go, "Well, I want to be a crew one day." And he said, "Okay. So what'd you do today that got you closer to that goal?" And I had nothing to say. I was like, "I haven't done anything. What'd you do yesterday? So what's your plans for tomorrow?" So all these questions, he just planted all these seeds in me. So I called up my original instructor, Harry Heyman, and asked him, I go, "Hey, how do I become a crew, a certified Muay Thai instructor?" And he said, "You have to go to Ajahn Chai and go through him." I said, "Okay." So he gave me his number. I called Arjan Chai and I told him what I wanted to do. And he goes, well, I need you to come live with me. And he lived, I think it was in Carson City at the time. And I was like, I'm like 7 hours from Carson City where I live now. And I'm like, there's no way I could leave my job, and you go live with somebody. I don't have money for all that. And so I figured at that point that my path for that wasn't going to happen. And I just so luckily had a student who worked on the railroad back when I guess there was railroads, not many left. And he was a conductor. So I'd see him a couple weeks out of the month, every month. And he goes, hey, there's a guy named Cheetah who just left Fairtex and he opened his own school. You should go check him out. I think you guys would get along real well. And so back when there was no Google Maps and there was no GPS, I found my way, an hour and a half from where I lived to Cheetah's gym. And I went to go see Cheetah. And he was crew chief at the time. And I went and met him, and he asked me what I want to do. And I said, I want to become a certified instructor in Muay Thai. And he looked at me and goes, you're white. I go, yes. He goes, like, you want to teach an Asian art? I go, yes. He goes, it is not going to be easy for you. I was like, what? Okay. And so at that moment, I started going to see crew chief at the time, Master Cheetah now. An hour and a half, I would drive from my house to his gym every Sunday, and I would train with him for about 2 or 3 hours. And I did that for 96, 97, about almost 2.5 years with him, privates. And then in 1999, we went to Thailand, and I lived at the Thai camp, and I lived there for a long period of time. And getting into the camp itself was hard because when we got there, Americans weren't allowed in camps, and
really,
it wasn't like you can go down now and just walk in and go, hey, I want to train Muay Thai and have someone to go. Back then it was taboo. It was like, no, it's only the Thais. And so when we got to the place, the International Muay Thai School, I had to wait outside. I couldn't even go in yet. So I had to sit outside, basically on the street, while he's in there talking to him, trying to negotiate them to take me in.
Wow.
And I'm watching these guys train. I'm like, dude, maybe I don't train. I don't know. This is what I came for, though, And he got the negotiation done. So I came in and I shared a room with 5 guys. I slept on the floor on a mattress with another person. There was no door, open and close. There was no privacy, obviously. No electricity in the room. There's in the bathroom had a bidet, if you know what that is, mm-hmm. And it had the shower head on top of the toilet. So you stood in front of the toilet to take your shower.
Wow. And
the drain was like right in front of the toilet. It was bizarre, but you do what you got to do.
You do what you got to do for the sport that you dedicated in. And yeah. This is one of the things that I think that a lot of people miss about why Muay Thai is different than some of the other martial arts that we're accustomed to when looking at MMA. So I'd love to have you talk a little bit about the origin and history and the traditions of Muay Thai and how it's different. You've also used some terms like Arjan and crew. And so help the audience understand a little bit more about the, kind of that origin and history of Muay Thai and how some of these terms and traditions relate.
Okay. The first thing I would stay with the origins is obviously Google's really good now for people to go find, you want to get details and exact dates and this and that. But I'll tell you that Muay Thai has been around as long as Thailand's been a country. And there's no other country that has its style named after it. So that's how deep this is in their culture. And, as far as the titles, over there, it's a little different than in America. Over there, they fight, as early as 5-6 years old. And when they retire, they become a crew or an instructor, and then they have Arjan is right above a crew. And there's different criteria, of course, in different gyms. The titles they're nice, but that doesn't nowadays you can go see somebody like Toddy and pay $1,500 and you can become a crew tomorrow with no experience. So having the right lineage and making sure that it's coming from a legit source is very important, because nowadays, just like jiu-jitsu, man, you can go to Brazil, spend $1,000 and get a black belt if you want to. It doesn't mean you're a black belt, you know what I mean? But it'll give you the parents. So it's very important for lineage, and where you come from and who you've trained under and who you're with. It's very, very important, I think. And I think that's missing nowadays because every school, on every martial arts school in the corner, they teach MMA, they teach boxing, kickboxing, judo, wrestling, sambo, Muay Thai, whatever the newest Krav Maga, whatever is the newest craze, everybody teaches it. And it's like, dude, there's no way if your instructor's 30 years old, let's say, there's no way he's a master in all these styles. It's impossible. You know what I mean? And you can't tell me I'm doing both at the same time. Well, then you're not dedicating yourself to either one of the styles, and you're not embracing how deep the styles are. I've been doing Muay Thai most of my life, and there's still stuff I'm learning. Just it never ends. It's so deep. I don't know if that answers your question, but
No, absolutely. And so there's another.
Ryan,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to step in for a second. So a little bit of the history itself of Muay Thai, Coach. I know that traditionally in some of your schools, I know one of the criteria that you have is that your students have to tell or give a detailed narration of the story of Muay Thai, something like that. For the uninitiated listener in our audience, because a lot of our listeners aren't familiar with Muay Thai at all. Could you kind of go over that some?
Sure. So, one of the criteria for projects, we do armband projects, which has been around since the 70s. So it's nothing new. In fact, it's getting more and more embraced now, of course. One of the levels going into green is I have them give us a story of King Tom. And King Tom was in Thailand, and he won his freedom by fighting, and he beat 10 people in a row. And they said that every limb of the Thai was blessed with venom. It's the only art that they call it King of the Ring for a reason, because they use their shins, they use their knees, use their elbows, and even use their head, so it's a different style of fighting for sure, and boxing is great and it's Western. It came from us over this area and in England, and Muay Thai is the branch where Savat came from the European style kickboxing. They all came to Thailand to learn this stuff, and they came back with their own rendition of what they got out of it. But that came from there. Now, did it really come from Thailand or did it come from Cambodian? There's all kinds of whole other level of where the origins come from. And now you're hearing about Muay Baran, and you're hearing about different styles of Muay Thai and stuff. And really, it's always been one style. Muay Thai is one art. What I teach is mainly Thai boxing, which is a ring sport part of it. It's a combat side of it. Where I'm teaching a lot of combat stuff, and then I know some of the Muay Baran stuff, and I know a lot of the different techniques that would never work inside the ring or the cage. But I try to gear my teachings to translate into MMA, because I basically chose a different path instead of going down the path with everybody else and having fighters just do Muay Thai and just doing kickboxing. And that's what I'm doing. I fell in love with NHB back in the day, now called MMA, and No Holds Barred. And now I went that direction. I was one of the first that started to go that direction, and tried to bring Muay Thai into the limelight, because back when the UFC was starting out, there was a organization called K1, and K1 was amazing. If you ever watched K1 stuff back in those days, man, there were some amazing fighters, and I thought that was going to explode in America. But as soon as it started taking a hold, boom, UFC came out, and you got the Savat guy kicking that sumo guy in the face, and everybody's like, what?
Tooth comes out, yeah.
Yeah, and you're like, what? Okay, so it changed the whole direction. Then it kind of killed the momentum that I thought that Muay Thai was having at the time, and so I decided back then, I was like, that's the direction I want to go. I want to go the uncharted, the path that nobody's on yet. That's the way I wanted to go. And it led me to a lot of different people. Met a lot of people before they were even famous. Chuck Liddell, Uriah Faber, all these guys, and the Diaz brothers before they're even famous. So it's been interesting. It's been a lot of fun. I still love watching MMA now. But did I answer your question, or did I just ramble?
Yeah. Well, a little bit more about King Tom, and if you would go back into that part of it, you were telling us he defeated 10 opponents and he won his freedom.
Yep, and he had a choice. They gave him a choice. Do you want to have money or two wives? And he chose two wives. Because he can always make more money, is what he said. Is what the quote that he said. So but the fact that that he was blessed with venom sticks in my head. That every limb that he had was blessed. They said was blessed with venom. And that before he fought, he did what they call the white crew, the Ramoy, and they said they hypnotized its opponents before they fought him. And so if you ever watch a Thai fight, before it starts, they're in the middle of the ring doing their Ramoy, and they're a white crew, and what they're really doing is they are giving respect for the camp that they come from. So each white crew will be a little bit different and have different movements. Some of the movements will be the same, but if you watch it, they're very unique to each camp. So you can watch somebody doing a white crew, and you can see, oh, okay, he comes from this camp or he comes from that camp. So it's very deep, man. It's a very deep art that it's not. There's not a lot of people that actually teach everything. Most people teach nowadays is punching and kicking and elbows and a couple of knees, but they don't understand. They don't grasp the concepts or how deep the clinch is or how deep elbows are. Because we're Western. We think about our hands first. And over there, they're about that's the weakest one you have to use is your hands. And so if you're over there, if you're fighting and you're throwing bombs on me all day long with your hands, and I'm kicking you, trying to counter kick you and hit you, at the end of the fight, I win because I'm throwing kicks and you're throwing punches. I'm using a skill that takes more to do than just throwing your hands. So it's a lot different than over here, and that's one of the reasons I went into judging and refereeing, is because I wanted to bridge that gap of the issues of judges not understanding art, and not understanding what they're seeing,
We were just recently having a conversation talking about judging as a matter of fact. And I think I put that on the spreadsheet to discuss with you about your time spent as a judge and referee. So if you don't mind, go ahead and tell us a little bit about that. How has it been for you transitioning from fighter to coach to judging, refereeing, and those things, and some of the gaps and holes you see currently throughout the fight scene in general, not just Muay Thai, but MMA as well?
It's funny you say that because you saw me at an event where I had, I think, 5 students fighting, and I was actually refereeing, and it was so hard for me not to coach them in the middle of it. Like, no, move left, like, oh my God. So I try to be as fair as possible, and that was very difficult for me. And I was trying to, I had one of my assistant coaches that were coaching at the time would coach over there. And I want to walk by and give them something advice, but I can't do that. I can't, but that's why I got into it though. So I wanted, in my career, I feel like, I'm in a point now where I want to keep giving back, not just to my students, but I'm seeing the gaps that's in MMA right now, and I'm seeing the holes that we have, and I feel like that's where I want to be, because as I get older, and let's say I'm 60, dude, how awesome would it be to go up and down states, getting paid to sit ringside, cage side, watch fights, and tell them what I think. You know what I mean? Like that's like ultimate. Doesn't pay very well. I mean, they don't pay very much at all, really, for it, but you do it because the love of the sport. You want it to grow and you want to see it. People, watching these fighters, man, they go on and they lose on the decision, and they don't understand why they lost. Like they're confused. Like, do what? I thought I won that fight. And I think some of that comes down to the coaching and the understanding what's going on during the event, during that fight, and what the judges are seeing. At some point you have to understand that if this Judge Hernandez over here, he's probably a boxing guy, so he's going to be looking for your hands. He's not going to care about your groundwork. And this other guy here, did some wrestling or something, so he's going to be looking at the takedowns. And so it's a matter of, I think the criteria for these judges needs to change. I think one of the things they were doing is they were having people come in with no experience, no martial art background, nothing, and so they would watch the fight and decide who they win because they have no idea what's really going on. They just say, this is who I think wins, is this guy. You know what I mean?
How would the commissions ever allow that to an untrained person who has no skill whatsoever? Like, because what was the rationalization behind that?
They're not biased.
Okay.
They're not biased, and they're just seeing with what their own naked eyes were seeing, and I understand that, and I can see that, and I can appreciate that. I think there was a time for that, maybe in the beginning. I think the beginning of of this whole transition of MMA. Maybe that was a good fit because nobody really knew what's going on. But now we're at a point where, I'm a blue belt in jiu-jitsu. I mean, my wife's a black belt, so I've been exposed to all this. My kids wrestle. I'm exposed to all this. And there's other, I think judging should be like a resume you turn in. Like if you're rounded and you understand it, you've been an MMA coach and you have a history of a little bit of deep. I think that's a better judge that's going to understand, like, okay, so that takedown and now he's laying on him. Okay. I don't know how important that is. He's not doing any damage. He's just holding him there. And he gets back up and the guy starts throwing bombs on him. He gets rocked and takes him down again and just lays on him. It's they swing one way, then they swing the other way. The takedowns are the most important thing. Well, what do you do with the takedown? Mm-hmm. If you don't do anything with that takedown, then that's just like landing a leg kick or a head
Where
kick.
you get pieced up, and is that the reason why you got taken down?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that I just felt that was my next calling and my next step in my evolution as a person, and what I'm doing is I want to be. Honestly, I want to be a UFC judge. That's my ultimate goal, and it's just the steps I need to take to get there, and starting with the IKF and being a judge for them and being a referee for them and training from those guys, and they've been amazing. So it's a lot of fun.
Speaking of the IKF and I think the WMC as well, can you tell us a little bit about those organizations and what they are, what they stand for?
IKF is the one I'm deep in with right now because they're real prevalent here in California. They're probably the biggest one, and they're maybe one of the biggest ones in the United States right now. They're doing events still. Well, nobody's doing events right now, but they're a great organization, man. Phenomenal.
What did it? The letters IKF themselves. What do they stand for?
International Kickboxing Federation.
Okay. All right.
And they have a big event every year, the Classic in Florida. And my goal is it was supposed to be in July, but who knows when they're going to be able to do that one. But that's one I want to go to, so I can judge or ref. Doesn't matter to me. I'll do the one. I like judging better probably than refereeing, because I feel like when you're reffing, man, you don't watch the fight. You're in the fight with these guys. You know what I mean? You're trying to protect these fighters. And, as a judging, you can just come back and you can actually enjoy the fight, but you have to pay attention to the fight, and they're different aspects of the same sport. And, there's good judges, bad judges, and good refs, bad refs. And some have good days and bad days. It's normal. We're all human,
As a judge, when you're watching a fight, what's the difference between that and, say, being just a common fan watching a fight? Like, what are you looking for as a judge in a fight?
If it's a kickboxing fight, let's say, or Muay Thai fight, I'm looking for effectiveness of striking. And in the clinch, I'm looking for the strikes in the clinch. I'm looking for the elbows and the breaks. I'm looking for who's controlling the fight, and not just landing the one or two big shots, because if you're getting destroyed in the clinch and you're getting destroyed with your legs, but the other guy's throwing big bombs on you, I'm paying attention to not only the damage, but how the fight's actually unfolding and who's doing the most damage, and not just a big, because when you're in a clinch and somebody throws a good knee, sitting ringside or cage side, man, you can see the damage that was done instantly because you're that close to that person. You can see the face, you can see the body mechanics of what happens. When you're sitting further back, you may see that was just a knee that landed.
Yeah.
You don't understand how much damage that knee actually did, and then later on that was what caused the downfall. Whereas with the hands and their spacing, you see that big overhand right hits you, the guy wobbles backwards, and you go, oh, that's so devastating. Was that more devastating than that clinching that folded the guy a little bit? You know what I mean? Only cage side are you going to be able to really see, or ringside, you're going to really see that what happens, in close like that,
Yeah, I think our normal fans have a hard time understanding how much damage can be done from different limbs other than just the hands. Because it's like you said, when you see a knee go up on camera, it just looks like someone got touched by a knee. But if you've ever been hit with a hard knee, you understand it. No, somebody's touching the organs inside your body. It's not just a touch.
So. Yeah, and there's no gloves on. There's no protection on your knees or your shins. There's no shin pads. There's no knee pads. No elbow pads. Those are all bones, man. It's not like your hands they got gloves on them to absorb some of the punishment. So it's it's interesting. It's interesting. It's a lot of fun for sure. It's a lot of fun.
Okay. All right. I want to pivot a little bit, and you mentioned an organization that you're president of earlier, the AMTA. What does it stand for?
You know what it stands for. I'm just playing.
Hey, I'm
Well,
just trying to
audience might
conduct the
not know.
interview, bruh.
American Muay Thai Association. I started that back in 1996, and my goal was to unite American Muay Thai coaches and teachers and get us all together on the same team and get an idea of what, the direction we want to take Muay Thai. Because the reality is this: Master Cheetah, Arjan Cheetah, Master Cheetah, he's more to me than just an instructor or my mentor. I love the guy. I love him. I love his family. I've been close to them for a long time. They're close to my family, and I know that he's a lot older than I am, and that's the second generation of Muay Thai instructors and coaches out here. I'm the third, right? I'm the third generation. And when the masters that brought us Muay Thai to the United States, when they're gone, it's up to us. And what do we do with it? And I don't think there's enough people out there like me that understand that we're on the verge of losing that because they're not coming over anymore. We're not having the influx we had back in the early 80s and 90s of these coaches coming over trying to escape their country. We don't have that anymore. We don't have the ones being real serious. There's only 7 masters that came over in the beginning, and I think only 3 or 4 are left. And some went home or went back to Thailand. So what's going to happen here in 5, 10 years, 15 years, you're going to have a bunch of Americans who spent very little time in Muay Thai, going to name drop and speak, well, I trained with so-and-so. But how long did you train with them? Was it a seminar? Was it 2 days? Was it a month? Because if you've been with somebody for 15 years or 20 years, you're a pretty good representation of what they're doing. But if you've been, you did a weekend seminar with somebody, but that's their name you're using to try to make money off of it, that's the whole reason not for this stuff. It's not to make the money, it's to share the art, and to share properly. And I think it turned into this money thing, man, where, everybody's taking shortcuts. Everybody wants it now, and it can't be now. You can't have it instantaneous. It's not just add water. You have to take time to grow it, and you learn from it. And I think there's probably maybe 5 or 6 guys I can think of outside my organization that I think that are still doing the right things and they're trying to promote the right ways, but they all come from serious lineage, but after that you have a lot of people who they need direction. If you're teaching Muay Thai somewhere and you don't have the backing of these masters down the road, what are you really doing? Are you doing this art justice? Are you really? Or are you just trying to make money? You know what I mean? And I think that's where I struggle, and I've struggled with that for a long time with people. I used to not like the idea that someone have Muay Thai on their building when I know they don't do Muay Thai, but they're do their karate style, throwing low kicks. That's Muay Thai now. Well, no, it ain't. But they're using it because it draws people in. And so I think, I started the AMTA to separate us from everybody else, to say, okay, these guys are a correlation, so we can share what we learn from different masters, because some guys in AMTA didn't come from me. They didn't come underneath me. They came from somebody else. But we share our ideas together, and we help grow the art and keep the art as pure as we can, so that when the time comes and we're the ones that have to carry the torch, that we're carrying the right torch and not our own personal torch, but our instructors and our teachers' torch,
Speaking of your teachers and your lineage, so I do understand also that in AMTA, you have a few instructors who are under you now, and out spreading Muay Thai, particularly here in the DFW community. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Tell us about some of those.
When I was in Texas for about 11 years, and I had a chance to train a lot of people, in different walks of life. Some were just trained, some were more serious, and I've had a few that have been with me since I got there. Stephen No is one who's been there since the day I started, and he's now took over my program that I had at Siam Star.
Siam Star here in Allen.
Yeah, in Allen. Then you have Coach Will over at
Sharpen Iron.
Iron, SIA. Yeah. We got Carlos Botello over there at Monkey Gym. He started with me early on too. He was with me for a long period of time. Will came to me with already some skills, and then came to me, and I kind of helped go to the next stage with him. You know what I mean? And Randall Kennedy's out there. And one day maybe George might be out there. We'll see. But the whole goal is to unite these people, to help these guys on the next stage. Once you stop becoming a fighter, what are you going to do? Do you have it inside your heart to keep teaching, or are you done and you just want to walk away from the sport? And I'm trying to keep this thing alive and do my part, and help them, just support them so they can keep going and see where they go with it. I like them all to be successful. I just want to. We all kind of get to watch them shine. There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's better to watch a bunch of people shine than to try to keep all the shine on yourself.
Cool. Speaking of watching people shine, tell us about some of the fighters you had who some of our listeners might be familiar with. Anybody? Any big names?
Alex Garcia came trained me for a little bit. I'm getting to know him. Of course, Steven Peterson. Of course, you all know him.
Another Texas boy, yeah.
Yeah. Diego Ferreira came and trained me for a little bit.
Okay.
It's hard to say, of course, because Will Florentino, of course, was training me. He's a crew under me now. There's been a few guys, and we beat some of these guys that are blazing trails everywhere. I'm not to, it's not, Texas was a hotbed, man. We had some really great fighters come out of there. That's big in the UFC now, and it's an exciting time to be part of all that, and seeing these guys. Just like when I was in California out here before I came to Texas, I got to see the explosion of MMA out here and where it was going, and when I'm hanging out with Chuck Liddell before he was anybody, he was just a dude from slow kickboxing. We fought Scott Leidy, which you probably don't know who he is anymore, but at the time Scott Leidy was this up and comer. He was going to be the next guy. Did K1. He was the next guy coming up, and he was the guy. And one of my fighters, Kavika, got the call for him, and the first punch Scott Leidy threw landed on Kavika. Kavika's a big Hawaiian dude. Okay, landed on his chin. Kavika dropped to one knee and stood back up. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a fight. And we lost that fight to a decision, but Scott Leidy never recovered from that. After that you didn't hear about him again. That was a war. What I remember most at the end of that fight is we went in the back and Kavika was like, oh, I should have done this and I should have done that. We're talking. We go to the doctor and he's checking him out, and they asked Scott Leidy to look to the left, and he goes, this looks like, couldn't even move his head, look to the right. Like he was. It took a lot out, so much out of him that I was like, wow. And so. But we saw these guys before they became anybody. The Diaz brothers. I know they got a bad rap, but man, Nick was a hell of a dude to one of my students, man. One of my students, Jerry, he was a young kid at the time, and he was a huge Nick Diaz fan from Pride, and we were at an event. Kavika was, I think, the co-main event on that event, and Cage Combat, I think is what it was called. And I saw Nick backstage, and I go, hey, man, one of my students is a big fan of yours. Do you mind meeting him? I was like, yeah, dude, bring him up. And so I called Jerry down, and he picked Jerry, because he was a kid. He was like 8 years old. Picked him up over the railing. Over the railing. That's all, because back then they didn't have real security. You know what I mean? They had just the railings to stop people. Picked him up over the railing, sat and chatted with him for about 15 minutes, signed a poster for him, dude. And then it's like, went above and beyond what I expected. I thought he was just take a picture and that was it, but above and beyond. And so later on in life, when Nick Diaz comes to the UFC and he's making it, now everybody knows who Nick Diaz is, and he's getting this bad rap of being this and that. I'm like, dude, that's not my experience with him. My experience was just the opposite. Just the opposite is that he was, outgoing, very cool to everybody on my side. You know what I mean? So for me, it was like, I was like the one Nick Diaz, the Diaz fans out there in Texas. Everybody's like, but yeah, it had an opportunity to meet a lot of people. I got a chance to teach for the Gracies at one time, and so, met Hoist, of course, Hoist nice. and Hinzo, and I'm name dropping now, right? Hoist and Hinzo and Hodger, and then Dan Severn came and did a thing at my place, So it's been exciting, man. It's exciting. This journey's not over; it's still going.
So you've really been around since the roots of MMA taking hold here in America. But speaking on that, in terms of Texas and California, How do you
Oh
see the
Lord.
state of MMA and Muay Thai in general? Because you've experienced it on both sides. You've gotten to see it here in Texas. And of course, we think we do things very well here. But vice versa, California is a hotbed for the fight scene. And
It
so
is.
I'm sure the experience out there is quite different. I went out to visit
It
you
is.
last year, and I was amazed at how different the feeling is.
It is. In Texas, we're blessed with XKO, right? XKO does an amazing job for us over there out in Texas, and they've always been good to me and good to my people, and they put on a hell of a show. We had LFA there for a while and Legacy back then, and there wasn't a whole, I think Steve Armstrong did a few events for kickboxing events that were good, but he stopped doing those, and so there wasn't a lot of Muay Thai push out in Texas like I thought there would be. There was mostly MMA, and there's mostly one or two organizations that were doing MMA. And in California, there's a few more organizations. But to be honest, and to be fair to both, I think the Muay Thai scene's stronger out here in California because IKF is based out of California, so they do events down south. They're doing in the valley and doing up north. They're all over the place. We didn't have that in Texas. We didn't have an organization in Texas that was like IKF that could do continuous events, and it felt like in Texas, it felt like there was an organization coming up that wanted to do Muay Thai stuff, but man, they want to charge like people $80 to sign up your student. Like, man, are we doing this for the money or are we doing this for the sport? We're in IKF, they don't charge that much to do anything, so it's a different approach of it, and for the MMA side of it, I'm actually doing the MMA when it was called NHB, No Holds Barred. That was when they used to call it. We had no weight classes. I remember showing up with a fighter to a Mark Hall event he had called the Cobra Challenge. I think it was like in 2000, I think. And we show up. There's no weigh-ins. Yeah. Why you showed up to fight, right? And then they had like the wall, and they just picked random names. So we fought some guy that was like 100 pounds heavier than we were. That's out. But the MMA events out here, there's a few organizations, but nobody, nothing other than the big pro ones they have out here.
Mm-hmm.
Combat America is out here. They do a lot of shows out in California, which is real big. I don't feel there's one organization that stands out in California. There's Beatdown 209, which is a local one. There's Stockton, Modesto, and stuff, and we have one of our fighters is about there now. I think, to be honest and to be fair, I mean, there's probably some shows I haven't been to down here yet. We'll see, California. But I think I kind of got spoiled with XKO. I got used to how they ran their shows and how user friendly, coach friendly it was. And over here we're still kind of other than the pro shows. I think the amateur shows, nobody's emerged as the one. You know what I mean? So I think that's still going. As far as kickboxing, I think California by far has a lot more stuff going on for if you want to do Muay Thai or kickboxing. There's a lot more going on here, But there's a lot of fighters out here too. But Texas ain't no joke, man. Texas has some very tough dudes, man, and you can see them in UFC now and how the hotbed is. The talent's high out there. So I mean, I can't compare the two as far as which one's better. I think they're just a little bit different. You know what I mean?
If you could bring something from Cali to Texas as far as the state of MMA or Muay Thai, what would it be? Like, what would you like to see Texas adopt and to help move the processes forward here?
It's just judging. That's what I got into it. I was trying to get with the TDLR while I was out there, and when the window opened, I just moved back to California.
Oh,
so that was my ultimate goal, was to get into judging out there in Texas and start to help this thing keep going forward and help go to the next level. You know what I mean? In my mind, go to the next level and help these guys. I got to a point where hearing about these judging and people went, oh, who was that guy watching? What's he watching? He's terrible judging. You see the guy's name come up, like, oh, that guy's a terrible judge. And for me, that was like, well, what are we doing about that? Are we just letting it go, or who's stepping up? If nobody's stepping up, then it's never going to get any better, And then I had to come to terms with the fact that, if I do that, then if I go into the pros and start doing all these pro judging, I can't have fighters anymore, And that's the trade-off, because then it's not right, It's going to be biased, and then they say, if people say it isn't biased, it is. because even if I'm not judging that event, I know all the judges at that point, and so if they know me, they know my fighters, and you tell me there's not going to be somebody going, I'll give him the first round. It was close. I'm going to give him the first round. You know what I mean? And so I knew that if I had to make this transition, I had to make the choice that's it. No more coaching, or no more cornering fights, and so that's the direction I was going to go. I was going to keep coaching, but I wasn't going to corner fighters anymore. I wasn't going to carry my fighters like I was carrying in Texas and before in California.
So this is very interesting. The question that I have now is, how do you balance the desire to keep Muay Thai strong and keeping growing the coaching and the art while fixing the problem that you see in the judging and how we approach scoring fights? Those two things seem like they're in conflict with each other.
AMTA. That's your answer.
That's the solution.
That's the solution, because now I have guys who I help them in the direction they need to go to in their each personal journey. Everybody has their own personal journey, but they understand Muay Thai better, understand the striking, some more striking. While I'm not having to corner these fighters, now I can focus on this side of it, and they can always bounce stuff back to me. So to me, that was going to be the answer. Is I gotta grow Cheetah's tree. At the same time, making sure the tree is still going to be true to its art, true to the beginning, true to the lineage. And at the same time, give me a chance to step to the next part without giving up what I was doing. So then, then they can call me in, come do a seminar for them somewhere, and I get right back into what I love to do and get just embrace that, and have a lot of fun at it. And then, and then keep trying to grow the other side of it so that I can balance the yin and the yang, if you will.
What's been your most rewarding moment as a coach? Like out of your history, what sticks out to you as a coach? Something from your past or some experience that you've had?
It's hard to say, man. It's the journey, man. It's a journey, and it's a journey when when you have certain people you come to, you don't know what they're dealing with when they come to you in your class. You don't know what their story is and what they really need, and how important training is for people. I've had some students tell me that it wasn't for me that I saved their life, and I think to myself, well, I'm just there to help you on your journey. I'm glad I was there to be able to do that. But it's helping people is the main thing at the end of the day. And there's been a lot of stories. I think when you take somebody who won't make eye contact with you, and you're in your class, and he signs up, and he won't make eye contact with you, looks to the right, looks to the left, and has no confidence in himself, no confidence in anything. And he sticks with you for a few years, and before you know it, he gets a girlfriend. Before you know it, he's feeling great about himself, and then he stops training and he goes to his own, he's out in the world. I think those are the stories that we don't see enough of, and I think we lose sight of it sometimes because we're so focused on the combat side of it that we forget that really the person that showed up, that came to us to help them get more confident about themselves because of whatever they're dealing with, we actually help change their lives in a positive attitude and a positive light. And now they're out able to go face the world and face challenges. I think that's the most rewarding part of it. I have a few students that story is exactly what happened with them. I'm not going to mention their names because I don't want to make them feel weird or something. But those are great ones that are like, okay, that's really what Muay Thai is about, is changing their lives in a positive direction. The combat side is just combat. It's not for everybody. 3% of your class is want to be fighters, and the 1% is going to end up being a fighter. And then when they lose and it's not going their way, how many stick it out? You know what I mean? And that's, and the MMA world has changed, man. I mean, you can spend 10 years developing a fighter, they'll become great, and somebody's going to swoop in and they're going to take your fighter and give some gold to somebody and whisper in their ears and say, "Oh, come here," and then you get. And then they go over and they start cherry picking into other gyms, and before you know it, they have all these good fighters, the best fighters in the area at one gym, and then that head coach is like, oh, he's God because he sucked all these people in. I'm not mentioning any names or nothing. I'm just saying that it's not a unique thing. It's what's happening in MMA. You know, you can go to an event and you could win a title, an event or whatever, and that coach that you just beat from comes over to you and says, "Man, you should come train with us, man. We got some, you know, da 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 da." It's like this is where they lost the whole lineage thing, and they lost what this really means. Is it, you know, is it personal or is it about the arts? You know, and
you see that very, very much in the MMA community, and I've seen it, I guess, transition over into Muay Thai as a result just as well. It's like somebody's not happy for whatever one reason at one school, and then decides, okay, well, I'm going to go over here because I like this better, and that, and you know what, people, that's their prerogative. But I think there's something to be said, what you were talking about the loyalty and the consistency, about staying within your camp and bringing yourself through those trials and fires. So yeah, can you talk about that a little bit as a coach, losing fighters? Because we often hear from fighters about their history and things that are going on with them. We rarely ever get to talk to coaches and understand what it's like, the fight life is like from a coach's perspective. And that's one of the things that I've already experienced as a coach, is losing a fighter. And I don't think people really understand what that does to coaches.
You know, it challenges you on levels, you know, that unless you're a coach, you never feel those levels. You know, whenever I'm watching UFCs and they say, oh, this guy used to train over here, but now he's training over there. Well, he was with somebody for so long and then said that's enough, because what they have been told is that if it's not working for you, to go somewhere else and get it somewhere else, get the instant gratification, that somebody's going to have the magic pill somewhere else. And the reality is that might be true. And maybe there's issues at the gym, maybe there's issues with themselves, but it's part of what's happening in MMA. You don't see that a lot in Muay Thai. You don't see people jumping, you know, gym to gym to gym to gym to gym. You don't see that with Muay Thai fighters or even boxers, really. But you do see a lot in MMA. And it's because, you know, in MMA, the funny thing is, you could have all the skills and make one bad decision and do one thing wrong, and that's it. You lost that fight. Oh, now you're on a two fight lose streak. What are you going to do? What's going on with you? You got caught. I mean, that's the world we're in. We're in the world of inches and seconds. I mean, how many fights have you seen so far that lasted like less than a minute, right? And then what are you going to say? Is the coach's fault? Is it the fighter's
how many
fault?
fights ended because of a bad reffing decision or a bad judge's decision? Yeah. And do you blame the coach for that?
Well, that's you know, these fighters. This is why you have to spend time with these people and help them make the right decisions. But you know, at the end of the day, this is their journey, and wherever they want. It's MMA. It's not Muay Thai, and it's not boxing. It's MMA. So you're gonna have to, you know, if they're gonna leave, they're gonna leave. And as much as it's gonna hurt, maybe they come back around. You know, luckily, I've been on both sides of that fence, right? You know, I've been on both sides. So, you know, luckily I'm still real close with, you know, Steven, who left at one time, you know, and he still came back and started doing Muay Thai with me. So it wasn't like I just lost the MMA side of it, which is, you know, it had to happen. You know, at that time I had nobody for him to spar with. So how's he going to get better? Right. How's he going to get that extra rounds in, you know? And it became difficult because my journey is teaching at other people's gyms, right? Mainly jiu-jitsu gyms, because I wanted them to do the jiu-jitsu side and I would do the Muay Thai, kickboxing, MMA side, and then we would go out there and do well. But you know, the game changes, and you have to be, you know, ready for it, you know, and evolve with it. And it's hard, man. It's a hard world to be in, and there's not a lot of loyalty anymore in MMA. You know, you can take a lot of these different fighters and see where they came from. And with the skills you're seeing isn't skills that they're learning from the gym they're at right now. It's the skills they learned out from when they were 10 years ago, you know, and that's what we miss. And we don't see that. Casual fans don't understand that or see that because we're over here just watching the end results of it, you know. And you know, UFC, it's interesting because, and even all the organizations, not just UFC, but LFA, you know, Combat Americas, all these, they don't ever talk about the gyms that they're coming from. They focus on the individual. This is John Jones coming out of Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
So what gym is he representing? What flag does he carry? They don't make an emphasis on that. Therefore, if he goes to Texas now, John Jones out of Texas. It become a very selfish art or selfish style MMA. It's all about the fighter, and no longer is it about people behind that fighter who build them up.
So a big difference in Muay Thai is very often a fighter takes on the last name of their camp, and so that's one of those things that I think MMA could stand to learn from another art form.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. It's just the contrast, and it's a growing pains you're gonna have to, if you're in this world, is you're gonna have that. If you're in the MMA world, you're gonna have to deal with the fact that the fighter that you built up that's so great could leave one day, and that's just part of it. But you can't change who you are as a coach, and you can't change that you care for somebody as a coach or as a friend. You just got to support them in whatever they feel is best for them during that journey. And I think a lot of this is building relationships, and not business, but MMA is a lot of it's about business too, and so it's something you play with back and forth, man.
That was going to be the thing that I was going to ask you is, when you start thinking about, when we started this conversation, we were talking about how Muay Thai is a part of the culture of Thailand. And when we look at other martial arts, whether it's, in the karate style arts or even Brazilian jiu-jitsu, it's in the culture. But when you bring in something like MMA, it's a sport first. It's a money-making proposition first. And so it doesn't have this cultural significance that the sport, the arts that make up mixed martial arts have. So it's unpure in a way.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, 100%. You're right. It's just, what do we do? How do we? Is it fixable? Is it, or this is what it is? And I think it's MMA is closer to being in the gladiators, to being in the arena. Nobody talks about who trained those gladiators how to wield their swords and their shields, right? That's never a conversation. It's only about that warrior and what he did, and you have to. It sounds harsh, but you have to know your role and accept that that's the role you have in them, and just just do the best you can with the person you have, at that moment, and worry for the next one up. This is why a lot of gyms nowadays don't want fighters. They're opposed to having fighters because they know the fighters are only in it until they're ready to go for the next gym. Once they feel they've got all your techniques, they're going to go to the next gym to get their techniques because they think they have something different. It's the same issue we're having with this COVID-19 and everything else. There's on one hand you have too much information, on the other hand you have not enough information, and then you have misinformation. And so decipher through all those things, is very difficult. If you go into my gym and I throw some low kicks or some knees and you're like, oh wow, those are awesome, and I start showing you this stuff, you go to another gym, they show you some punching stuff. Oh, that's awesome. I'll go over there do punching. That's the difference. Is they're not, people nowadays aren't really ready to settle in to do one art and just be, that's it, I'm going to do this. Everybody wants to do a little bit of everything, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just how the evolution's happening, and
so, speaking of the evolution of MMA, and so that's kind of what we're seeing now. You're getting guys who are coming up and they didn't come from a strict Muay Thai background or a strict jiu-jitsu background. They trained in a little bit of everything now and evolved as a fighter into that. They are pure mixed martial artists as opposed to a Muay Thai fighter who became an MMA fighter or a jiu-jitsu guy who transitioned into MMA. And you're seeing more and more of these guys now. I think like Rory McDonald, a few other guys, in the UFC are names that you could really identify as those types of fighters. And that's where I think this is headed. You were talking about the evolution of the fight game in general.
Yeah, no, 100%. 100%. That's these new fighters are going to have different coaches, more than just one coach. They're going to have an MMA coach who does only MMA stuff and putting this stuff together. They're going to have a jiu-jitsu coach to help focus only on their ground stuff. You're going to have a wrestling coach to help on the takedowns. So you're going to have a boxing coach to help with their hands. You're going to have a Muay Thai coach to help them with the rest of their limbs. And then the MMA coach is the one who puts it all together for them. And that's what a real team of a real MMA fighter should be, is 5 coaches. So if it's 5 coaches, what gym in America has 5 elite coaches that you can go to and get everything in one shot? None. 0. Right? Everybody's got, and then they're sparring, right? Then you got to have good sparring partners.
Good sparring partners, yeah.
I mean, and what do most men and women who fight, what do they want the most of? What's the funnest for them? Sparring. It's not about getting their technique better. They think they need to get more sparring in order to get there, and that's what leads into damage. Because the more sparring you get, the more damage you take, and the more damage you take, you could be hurt before you even go into the fight. You could have brain issues going on before you go, and you could have concussion from sparring. And now you're going to go in a fight and get knocked out in the first round. And they think that guy is great, but what they don't know is that, you were seeing stars 2 weeks ago in your last hard training camp, and these are the challenges that we have.
So speaking of sparring, I kind of want to pivot over into what you were just talking about, CTE and brain trauma.
Yeah.
In your experience as a coach, how prevalent is it?
It's everywhere. It's everywhere. I mean, back in, I think it was 2001, I had a fighter fighting, and we fought Bobby Southworth. You know who he is. He was an Ultimate Fighter at one time. And I think we were fighting a 3-round fight. And in the second round, he came back to the corner, and I looked in his eyes, and it was just glazed over. And I was trying to talk to him, and he wasn't listening, and I just waved it off. I go, "We're done. We're done. I'm not sending him back out there to get knocked out, to get seriously hurt." He was already too much for him. And I think there's a disconnect between wanting to win so bad and wanting to protect that human, that person, that friend, that student, protect them from themselves. Because I can tell you, a lot of these fighters say, "Well, don't ever stop it, coach. Don't stop. Just let it go. Let it go." If you care about somebody, that's really hard to do. It's really hard to do. Like, it was really hard for me to watch them not throw the towel in that last fight. Like, as a coach, I'm like, dude, when he came to the corner and you told him to do a Enzo Gari, bro, that's a wrap, man. He wasn't doing anything. He wasn't improving what he was doing. You should have, as a coach, and this is the tough part, right? Because then if you step in as a coach and call the fight off, the fighter's going to be mad at you, and maybe he leaves you now. I would have won that fight, but you called it, so I'm going somewhere else because you don't care about me. When the reality is just the opposite. I cared so much about you that I realized where this is going. Yes, there's always that one shot, but you guys both know from watching that fight that we just saw, the chances of him knocking the other guy out was probably less than 1% at this point. He had nothing on his hands, nothing on his legs. He had no strength left. He was at a point where he's only taking damage now. And how long do you let somebody go taking damage? In amateurs, they stop it a lot faster, right? As soon as somebody gets rocked, they stop it. And in boxing and kickboxing, if you get knocked down, you get a standing 8 count. Well, MMA doesn't do that. MMA lets it go. And I don't know if a standing count should be thought about, maybe. But in MMA, it's like, well, if he gets hurt, then they jump on him and go for a choke or something, or try to submit him. Then it's this is where the challenges are for the CTE stuff, because these are 4-ounce gloves they're using,
Right.
And we won't know really the effect of all these fighters until for another 5 or 10 years.
That goes into the next thing I want to ask you about. Was a lot of times people, we expect to see these blatant effects after a fighter who's suffering from CTE or anything like that, but very often it's not. You don't get to see what's really going on behind the scenes. Can you talk about maybe some of the things that fighters go through in dealing with that after, when the lights are off, after everybody's left the ring, after everybody's left the cage, and they're at home? What kind of things do they go through?
I have a close friend who was a student who got knocked out at an event that we won 2 belts in that event. And we had 3 fighters there. We won 2 belts, and he got knocked out. Backstage, while the show's still going on, he's asking me, "What time do I go up?" when do I go up? And I'm like, dude, it's over with. And about 2 seconds later, hey, do I need to get ready? What time do I got to go up? And I'm like, dude, fight's over. We're done. And I told him, you got knocked out. He's like, I got knocked out. Oh, okay. I feel okay. I was like, okay. Hey, when do I go up? Am I going up soon? I'm like, their brain becomes in this loop, and it's a scary thing to see somebody you care about when their head being loopy. And this is the combat sport we're in, right? We all know this, so just accept this, but had taken him to the hospital, and then 3 hours later he seems normal again. And now he don't remember anything that happened. He don't remember the fight at all. It's a black spot that they have in their memory for the rest of their lives. And what I have noticed is that when somebody has gotten knocked out and their brain because their brain hits the other wall inside their skull, right? That's where the concussions come from. So once that has been done, they're more susceptible to get knocked out again. And then once you've had a few, man, it's just like you barely touch the guy, and because there's nothing holding together. It's been damaged. He's damaged now. Look at Overeem we just saw. Overeem, I grew up watching Overeem, man. He was the Demolition Man in Pride, and he was freaking dude. I love that guy. He was a beast. His knees were killing people back in the day, right? He got touched by a guy who supposedly hits pretty hard. Okay, but he barely got touched, and you saw what happened to him. And it wasn't just this fight. You watched the fight before, he got touched, and the fight before that, he got touched. Marco Krokop, no different. Once they've had a concussion like this, they're more susceptible. And once they've had 2 or 3, you're going to start seeing these fighters, down the road. We like Chuck Liddell, but it's hard to listen to him talk nowadays, right? You hear him talk, and it's sad and scary at times, where at some points he seems normal, and then the other points it seems like, I don't understand what you're saying. And I think we're going to find out here in the next, 6 to 10 years, the real repercussions that has happened from all these people getting concussions that, in between fights, because there's been plenty of times I've been watching him fight and the camera zooms in to listen to the corner talk, and I can see by looking at the fighter in his eyes that he's already had a concussion. Mm-hmm. His eyes are glazed to a point where, he's just staring at the coach. He's not interacting with the coach, and he's just ready to go. Because that's what fighters do, man. They go. That's all they know. That's what they're there for. And it's going to be interesting, to see how our sport is going to evolve in the next 10 years with this stuff. Because if you look at NFL and you look at all the things they start putting into place now because of concussions, MMA is going to go through the same thing, man. We're going to have the same issues, because what do they have when they're done? What do these fighters have?
Right now, there's no fighters union. There's no insurance or benefits to cover them later on.
None.
And much of the damage they incur, like you said, it doesn't even become, I guess, visible. Not even visible, but it doesn't even reveal itself until times later, years later, even.
Who about Jason Mayhem Miller? You guys remember him?
Yeah.
Yes.
What happened to him? They call him crazy now, and he went off the deep end. How much you want to bet is because of CTE?
I can think of several fighters, even currently fighting now, that we wonder whether or not a lot of their behavior is related to CTE. Diego Sanchez, the Diaz brothers to some degree. Mm-hmm. You can float names around.
We're talking about Mark Hunt, right? And I was sending a video of Krokop landing a left head kick on Mark Hunt, and he got back up and kept fighting. And so, as a fan, we're like, wow, that's a warrior spirit. But one of the things that really comes out to me that has been the refrain that you've come back to is that when it comes to Muay Thai, you become a family. When you wanted to increase your knowledge of the art, you were invited to come and live with someone. So you become part of the family, and it's not about it seems to me, and I'm making an assumption here, it seems to me to be less about the battle, but more about the journey and the increasing of the knowledge of the art, and less about what I actually do with it in a ring in combat. Is that fair to say?
It is, until there's a combat style, right? I mean, my first, I'll give you a quick story. When I went to Thailand, with Cheetah, and they brought me in. I watched them training the first class because it's the middle of their training. And I looked around and I was like, okay. And then this bike, not a bike, but the car drove up, and a guy came out, and two other fighters came walking out, and they took their shorts off, put on these other shorts, posed, took a photo, and the guy left. And those are two of their champions. I'm like, oh, okay. Those, that was doing like a photo op for one of their fights in Lumpini later on. And so our first session of class coming, I'm like, these guys are hardcore. Like, I'm going to go to the bag furthest away from everybody and kind of put myself in the corner, not be that white, because I'm like the whitest guy there, right? Obviously. I'm not going to try to stand out and be some American Chuck Norris. So I'm going to, Mr. Badass. I'm not going to be that guy. I'm just going to go in the corner. And I start working out in the bag, and the boss, who was in a wheelchair, watches everybody. We call him the boss. He watches everybody. He started yelling at me. I don't know what he was saying to me, but he was yelling at me, pointing me to point to the bag next to him. So I came and I started working out in the bag next to him. And then he yelled at me again, and he pointed me to the ring. Now, this is the first class, remember, the first session, and this is what I was trying not to do, was to be that guy. So he pointed me to the ring, and then their champion, who I just saw take pictures earlier today, is coming in the ring with me. I'm like, well, so we're sparring on the first day, first session. Like, this is not badminton here. What we're doing, this is, and so he gets in the ring, and I'm like, okay, this is what's going on, and okay, and eventually you're starting to prepare yourself. I'm getting my ass kicked today, okay, except that's happening because this guy is a champion. I'm just some white dude from America who wants to be Muay Thai. And I guess this is what this is what you want, this is what you get, type deal. And so I remember telling him right before we started, just don't kill me, right? Like, I prepared myself mentally for an ass kicking, but just don't kill me, because I thought to myself, if I die here in the camp, which they say more people died in Muay Thai than any other art, right? If I die here, there's going to be headlines on the paper that an American died in Thai camp. And then I was like, well, nobody knows I'm here. I told my dad and my grandfather and grandmother and my family, I'm going to Thailand. I'll be back in a few months. Yeah, that's like saying you're going to Plano. You know what I mean? Like, no concept of
what you're
where are you
doing.
going to look for me in Thailand? That's a freaking country, And so I told him, don't kick me in the head. I mean, just don't kill me. The first thing he does is throws a head kick at me. The very first thing, and I blocked it. And I went 5 rounds with this guy, and I got my licks in. He got his licks in. It was, I don't know if he was playing with me, but I was fighting for sure. At the end, when I go into my room, that's when all the kids started coming, hanging out with me inside my room. So I had 3 or 4 kids that lived at the Thai camp, because everybody lived there. They started hanging out with me on a daily basis. They taught me how to speak some Thai. They showed me how to write some of the Thai stuff, and it kind of accepted me in. So I guess that was without knowing it, that was my entrance in. Like, if you suck, then you're out. And so crazy.
So did you ever have that conversation with your master? I'm sure he saw this go on. Did he ever tell you, like,
He wasn't there?
Oh, he wasn't there.
No. When he took me there, he brought 2 groups of people to Thailand. One group was me and 2 other guys to go to the Thai camp, and the rest he was going to go around on a tour around Thailand. So once they negotiated with me to be in there, he left and says, okay, I'll see you in a few weeks. When he comes back down, so going somewhere else. So I don't know nobody there. None of them really speak English. There's no telephone. There's no internet. So the internet wasn't even developed yet. There's no air conditioning. You know what I mean? So the routine I had while I was there was I would wake up in the morning, train, eat, shower, go back to sleep, wake up, train, eat, shower. 4 hours in the morning, 4 hours at night, every day, except for Sundays we only trained once. But that was the regimen out there, and that's serious. That's serious training every day. We sparred every day. We trained with other trainers every day. It was quite the journey. I got a lot of time to reflect on myself while I was out there. That's all you can do, really. But
wow,
fun stuff though. So nowadays you can go to Thailand and go to some American camp, like the Tiger Muay Thai camp, where they have air conditioning and they got, your own chef for you and stuff. Man, we had a big thing of rice, and you can eat whatever you want to. And I got 3 little small duck eggs for breakfast in the morning, and 3 little strips of buffalo for dinner on top of the rice, and that's all we had. I ate with all the fighters. We just, it wasn't like we had a chef there that was cooking for us, and it wasn't designed for. It was just a camp, man. It was another camp that they fought. They had a board. They had a board inside the camp that had everybody's names down and when their next fight was with their, And I asked this kid that came into my room, the first kid, his name was Ak. He was 13 years old, and he was showing me that he just fought, and he was 13 years old, had 103 fights already.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a lot.
All right. Well, George, do you have anything else?
I'm trying to think.
We touched a little bit about
Carlos,
the impact of COVID-19. So how was that affecting? When we first started, you were talking about how there are gyms that are shutting down. Like, how is COVID-19 and this kind of social distancing affecting people's ability to train and that type of thing?
Well, clinching's out, obviously. Pad work's out. So what I did is just look at what I had, which I had heavy bags, and each heavy bag is spaced 6 feet from each other. So I had everybody use their own heavy bags, bring their own gear, and then when the class is over, I had them clean their own bags afterwards. So it's only your stuff, and we're fortunate to do that. The gym in Oakdale to do that, and in Merced, but there's a lot of gyms that can't do that, and it's going to be a struggle for them. What they're going to do for jiu-jitsu and wrestling, man. My daughter wrestles, my son wrestles. They can't do anything. That's all contact. There's going to be more gyms closing, unfortunately, because there was no help for these. When they come and close up, they didn't tell the landlords to stop charging rent, so it makes it very difficult for them to maintain. I mean, how many people can say, okay, you can't work with no income for 3 months, but you still got to pay your rent or your mortgage? Well, good luck. So yeah, sorry.
Speaking of income, last question I probably have for you, speaking as a coach, tell us what it's like financially as a coach. Like, a lot of people have this idea that you're going to go out, you're going to get this one fighter, and this fighter is going to make millions, and therefore you're going to become a millionaire by default because you're the coach and things like that. What is it like financially? What's it like for coaches out there?
Well, you're going to have the one coach, right, from Jackson, right? He probably made good money at doing this because he has these fighters that he's picked from everywhere else, But the majority of these coaches, I would say 99% of them, they paid to be there. They paid money out of their own pocket to fly there. Paid money out of their own pocket to stay in the hotel. Paid money out of their own pocket. The fighters don't pay.
Right.
You think fighters are paying tuition? No. Most fighters are trained, they figure that they're doing you a favor by training at your school, and so there's no money coming in. You're not going to make any money as a coach. You're not going to get anything fame wise. You got to do this because you love to do it and be okay with that, and the reality is this is not for everybody, and you're not going to make $1 million off these guys. Even if you do 20% of their purse, you got a guy who makes $100,000. Okay, yeah, 45% that's going to go off taxes, and after you pay, after that fighter pays for the hotel rooms and all that stuff he pays for, you're not going to get very much out of that, And if you get $5,000 out of his big winnings, right? If he's training you all year long, $5,000 isn't a lot of money for your time, your effort, how many free privates you gave him, how much time you spent with him, how many things that you sacrificed with your family to be there. Man, there's no money in there for coaches. It's there's not. And it's no money for the fighters either. Honestly, the last fights I didn't look at how much the people made, but if you take like what Overeem made on this last fight, it probably wasn't very much, but 200,000-300,000 maybe.
Yeah, it was 375. I think was what he made. I might be
375. So if you take off, let's just say half of it for taxes. Okay, so you're at half of that. and you got your travel expenses. I mean, the guy ends up taking home what, about $100,000 maybe for one fight.
Paying your camp.
Yeah, well, and that's an upper level fighter, right? That's a guy who's up here, who's been up here. Take the guys down there in the mid card or the preliminary cards. You know what I mean? Those guys are making what, $4,000 or $5,000 a fight if they're lucky.
Yeah.
How far does $4,000 go after taxes? You're down to $2,000, and then after you pay for everything, you're down to $1,000, and so your coach got $100 out of it. Yeah, this is. I mean, you got to do it because you love it, and then it costs the coaches more money to be there, than it is to not be there, and so you have to want to be there and enjoy that part of that journey, and being there, done that. It's fine. It has to be like now, just like when George came when I first met George. You have to be a special person for me to want to spend time to give up for that stuff. I'm not in it for this guy who just wants to get their techniques. I'm looking for relationships long term and not short term. Because there ain't no money in it. There ain't none.
Wow, this has been a real treat. I have to say I am thankful to you for
Thank you, boss.
giving us the time to really talk to us about a whole bunch of different things, and I really gained a new level of understanding about how Muay Thai and the traditions of the art go well beyond just what we see in MMA and the sport that we cover in the UFC, which is really about kind of picking and choosing and cherry picking, techniques and gems to, so that you can win fights and make money. There's very big difference between the two of those.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right.
Right. Well, gentlemen, I think we go ahead and Carlos, I really appreciate your time today. We do need to go ahead and wrap this up. It looks like we've been on for an hour and 20 minutes so far.
Yeah.
But Ryan, I think we got some good content today. Anything that you want to go over, Coach? Anything you want to bring up, talk about, or anything like that?
Yeah, I want to be on your guys' show.
Oh,
all right.
Bring
like
it
that.
in, you guys. I mean, I love what you guys are doing. That last one I was in there listening to you guys. I'm like, man, I need to be in this conversation here. This is some good stuff going on. I mean, all these point of views it's important. I think people need this more now than before. I think we're at a point now that we want to see what other people are saying, and not just a one-way conversation. So I think what you guys are doing is awesome. I love it, and I think it's important. I think this is an important time.
All right, definitely.
Thank you.
We would love to have you on as a guest and maybe look at maybe doing something more.
Yeah.
And this is the venue that we typically use is Skype.
Mm-hmm.
So you got the idea behind it already. So definitely, man.
Nice.
Our next regular, our guest big show will be the next pay-per-view.
It'll be the next pay-per-view.
June next weekend.
Well, there's a fight on the 30th, right? But I think June 6th is the the next pay-per-view
UFC event. Yeah,
250, which nobody's excited about except for me.
Hey, I'm excited to watch any fights right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm kind of pissed off at UFC, to be honest, because they gave me 3 in 1 week, and then I had nothing this week. I'm like, what are you supposed to do?
I'll tell you something. With those 3 in 1 week, it really put it on blast, though, how bad the judging can affect fighter's career, how refereeing can affect the fighter's career. Like, you got to see it 3 times back to back to back. It's like, damn, this is really prevalent. So,
you know what I feel sorry for? I feel sorry for Peterson.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know what happens sometimes as referees. Now, put myself in the referee mode. Is if I stop the fight too soon, and maybe it's too soon. I thought it was too soon. On the next fight, I overcompensate, and I let it go further than it should have went. Mm-hmm. And they're human, and for him, the referee's number one job is to what? Protect the fighter.
Protect the fighters
from itself. And did I think that stoppage was early? Hard to say. Dom wasn't coming up. His hands were like he was on the way up, but it's a split-second call, and he got a better view than all of us, and we're from a distance. And in watching the Overeem fight, as a referee, maybe they should have stopped it when Overeem's eyes rolled back to his head and he fell against the fence. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so these guys are human, though. It's a human art, combat sport. We have to just understand that they're going to make mistakes. You may not agree with them, but they are trying to do what's best for most of them. I'm not. Most of them are trying to do what's best. I've seen him ref a lot and be pretty good. But it's sad because now everybody's hating on him because he smells like cigarettes and liquor or something like that. So,
Wait, I was gonna say, a couple of the other referees came to his defense. Herb Dean came out and said, "No, that's not the Steven Peterson I know. He's never shown up here smelling of alcohol or smelling like cigarettes. It's he's like, I don't know where Dominic Cruz is getting those ideas from." I was really surprised that someone like Dominic, who's typically known as a very stable character in terms of what he says about people, let something out like that about a referee. I mean, Dominic's on TV as a broadcaster, as an analyst and things like that. And I was kind of disappointed that he went in on a guy like that.
100% of the money there. 100% of the money. I think what Dominic isn't addressing is the fact that the game passed him up.
Yeah.
I hate to say that.
Being out for 4 years, that'll happen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and you go against a top-level guy, what do you think's going to happen? Just because you don't know his name or we're not real familiar with his name, this guy's hungry. Mm-hmm. He's hungry. He should have took a tomato can. Mm-hmm. He should have took somebody to warm his skills up and somebody who's like 3-0 or 4-0 just to get back in the groove of things. You don't go step back in because you've been out. Look what happened to your boy McGregor.
Yeah.
You got to just step back in. You
need a tune-up fight.
You need a tune-up fight, man. You got to be smart about this.
All right.
All right.
Well, gentlemen,